Hi, my name is Hazel, and welcome to Anchor Point. Kids and adults have had trouble understanding each other for a long time. That's nothing new. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's bad. Today, we talked to a guy named Josh, and heard some of his experiences tutoring kids, and why it's so important that we take time to listen to each other.
And then you just gonna want to try to keep the microphone as close to your mouth as
okay, kind of like this.
Not too close. And,
about two fingers.
Yeah, right
like
there.
That.
That's good advice.
So
Thank
if
you.
you just want to talk like this and be super weird,
I mean, this would work. I mean, it'd keep you at the perfect distance. I'd just be afraid of your fingers getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. We hear you good now.
Last
Buddy.
guest was swinging their microphone all around, so you couldn't really hear
It was
them
Dar.
at all.
Josh knows Dar.
You guys are too young. Oh, yeah, I do. Dar's a great dude.
Yeah.
You guys are too young to know this, but that's a Taking Back Sunday thing. You know, they swing the microphone around. It caused a feud between the other bands, but you guys are way too young for that kind of music.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, that's good for you. You don't need to listen to the emo music from 20 years ago.
I think actually that might be something Hazel would enjoy, and you should Google it later, Hazel, so that you can check it out.
Yeah, the gateway would be My Chemical Romance. If you heard of them and like that band, you might, like the others.
It's still good music.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think our music is the best music.
I mean, how much time do we have?
You're honestly a really cool dude, Josh. You helped me figure out all my college stuff, even though I didn't really need it.
Well, and I think I learned a little bit along the way, too, so I appreciate your patience with me. But yeah, when I found out you were part of this, too, I was like, oh, of course, yeah. Hazel's a great kid, great person. I know Lee, so I was sold. But yeah, it's nice to see you again. I appreciate that, that I helped in some way, hopefully.
So I don't know if Kelly told you when she reached out to you, but a long time ago, we had the youth list people that they wanted to interview. And so you've been on their list for a really long time. And every name that ended up on that list is there because these are folks that have really shown up for these young people.
It's humbling, really, to be on that list. I think I can relate. And when I was younger, I had some adults that really made a difference for me and made me feel valued and seen as a human being and not just as a youth, because there's a bit of a division sometimes. And so to really be seen as a person, I think is important. And I try to do that with these guys. So I'm grateful to be here, though.
When I was younger, I remember the adults in my life, they're like, wow, you're very gifted, you're very smart. And then when I got into middle school and I stopped having the same support that I was getting in elementary school, and I started getting more stressed out, it stopped coming so easy to me. It wasn't that I had lost any intelligence, it's just the environment that I was in, it wasn't suited for me anymore. And I started getting bad grades. This led into high school where I was still failing classes because I wouldn't talk to tutors and I wouldn't talk to counselors, not in any way that actually had to do with the work. I refused to let anybody actually help me. And eventually I graduated high school, and I was then told that I needed to figure out how to get into college. And I didn't know who to ask because I didn't have any safe adults in my life, whether that was perceived or it was true. I didn't have anybody that I felt I was comfortable enough to go to.
Oh, you just articulated something that I think about often. So you were talking about how, through fifth grade, you had all this support around you and all these people lifting you up. As an educator, from my perspective, I would say that's not just you. That is a developmentally insulting thing that we do to all of our youth in a systemic way. Because just like you said, until fifth grade, kids are basically in the same class of kids where they have really positive, nurturing relationships. Adults communicate with each other, parents, teachers, schools. And for some reason, our culture has set it up that when kiddos hit sixth grade, we, I guess, assume that they've grown up all of a sudden, and we pull all those supports out from underneath them during one of the most important developmental brain times of their lives. As we all know, that's when kids start to go through puberty in our brains, we're going through what's called neural pruning. So basically, you're losing like a third of your brain, like literally, right? And adults stop communicating. You're put with other kids from other schools you've never met before. And so, one of the things I just wanted to say about that is I just want you to know that that's honestly most kids' experiences. And it is something that really deeply bothers me, because what kids need at that point in their life is more. They need more of that support than they've ever had before because of what is happening developmentally, both physically with their bodies and internally with their brains. So I just wanted to tell you that in case no one's ever said that to you before, just so you know.
Thank you.
And it's something, it really bugs me. And I think it would be a pretty easy thing to change, especially like in a little community like ours. If we decided, that we didn't want to do things that way anymore, we wouldn't have to.
And that makes a lot of sense, just with my experience working in the school system here in Del Norte County. And I think I agree with the assessment. It's not something I've thought of in that way, but it checks out. I mean, these students are human beings that are going through life and learning, from their environment around them. And so it's really nice to have support and have that. And then all of a sudden it changes and gets cut off. And it's also at the point in these students' lives, like you're saying, where we're going through a lot of emotional changes, hormones, different things. And on top of that, you're learning who you are as a person. I remember when I was in 6th and 7th grade, that was when I really started to first kind of like, oh, I like this music compared to like what my parents listened to all the time. Or like, I thought I liked this food, but I think this actually is my favorite food, and having like critical thinking about who I am as a person. And that changed a lot, from 6th, 7th grade Josh. But I think it is unfortunate that we don't have a really thoughtful way of still supporting students in the same way we would through kindergarten, because it's not like we are on our own at 12, but that's just the...
Not to put it too metaphorically, but it's kind of like a baby talking a puppy up until they're not a puppy anymore, and then just letting that puppy sit out in the yard.
I think that is perfect, right? And I would add to it, it's not even letting that, it's forcing them to sit in the yard and refusing to open the door.
Yeah.
And this,
no.
That's absolutely true. And even like it doesn't even apply to just adults and children. I mean, it can apply to, my sister Katie, she is 7 years younger than me. And it's like, yeah, when I was 7, I was young enough that I can barely remember like even being at the hospital when she was born. But now that I'm older, the 7 years, it becomes so much more glaringly obvious. And it is really hard for me to emotionally connect with her sometimes. And I can see that happening on an even larger scale between adults and children, because they're so vastly different.
To me, the thing that I'm thinking of is, that we don't have a lot of the same experiences, because stuff has changed so much from when I was a kid to, now you guys. Technology is so much faster. There's so many more options for what you guys might want to do for careers.
Yeah, with technology, it separates us, and that creates a whole new layer that people can see, when instead it's more go out and meet people, talk to people, have fun. Don't stare at a screen for hours. Go out there and touch grass is basically what I'm saying, but
100%. But we're also in a world where it's kind of hard to not use the screen in some capacity, right?
It's a tool that a lot of people use just to feel good.
Right, or to stay connected too, to go out and touch grass with your friends and have some time outside, you might need to use the phone to call them, right, to get there. And I think that's one of the hardest things right now that we're facing as a youth is figuring out the balance between needed technology and technology that might be a little bit, overbearing, or when to put down the device or the phone. I don't know. That's just something I think is more and more of a challenge, I guess, for human beings in general.
Yeah, that's so true. I have actually been considering lately getting a flip phone to try to disconnect from the internet. No more apps, no more Instagram, nothing like that. And then I think about it and I'm like, how much would I actually be giving up with that? So much conveniency would be gone. And there's some things that I use on my phone that are actually necessary. For example, like I had told you, Taryn, I've been trying to start stretching and working out every day. I'm on this weird self-wellness kick since I joined this podcast.
That is not weird.
Sorry. This needed self-wellness kick. I have been in a pretty large slump recently, so I'm trying to actually build some healthy habits, and I kind of need that right now. And so if I were to, get rid of my smartphone and get a dumb phone, it's so much harder to ask people to just get off their phone when it's kind of so entrenched into our culture.
My personal challenge is when, I'm sitting there at 11 o'clock at night and I'm scrolling and I'm not using the app. I'm not using the phone for any positive thing. I'm kind of going down that rabbit hole. And I think there's a disconnect, like the wider topic about feeling connected to each other, right, and having meaningful connections as people. The phone is a great tool, right, or the device can be a great tool, but at the same time, it can be really alienating. So it's almost new territory, but I think there's an answer in here. There's a balance, it's just it's a challenge to find it.
It also has affected like learning in a sense, because instead of retention and paying attention, most people can just look up at a screen, type a few words in, and, oh yeah, I have my answer. Yeah, write it all down.
Right. No, that's an excellent point, Azel. And I think we're becoming, we're shifting to a society where there's a lot of, we used to be a society where people would learn about particular topics, and you might spend your whole life becoming a stonemason, right? Or you might spend your whole life like really honing, becoming a chef, or something like that. And people still do that, and that's still a very common thing for some people. But now that we have this technology in our pocket, it's very common for us to know a little bit about a lot of things instead of a lot about a few individual topics. And there's pros and cons to that. But I think there is a lot of power in being able to learn and master something. And the phones and the instant technology access we have now makes that a little bit harder, I think, almost, because you could just look it up, right? Why would I want to learn something if I can just, type it in? I don't know.
So it's funny you say that because, well, it's not funny. It's tragic. Okay, so I used to think, my background is teaching. I was a teacher forever. In many ways, I still am. But anyhow, as when tech started coming out, I was like the first teacher that went 1-to-1 Chromebooks in my classroom, right? Nobody else in the school was doing it. And I would have told anybody, like, we don't need to teach kids facts anymore. We can just Google it, right? Well, then I discovered the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, that we talk about all the time in the book, What Happened to You and Whatnot. And one of the things that I didn't know that is really important is, all of us have had these moments, like usually we're in the shower, not all the time, but most of the time we're in the shower and we have these like big aha moments and these great ideas. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right?
The one place you can't write anything down.
Yeah, right? And you're kind of like on automatic, so you don't got to have a lot of brain power going into like washing your hair, right? Plus you're like totally calm and regulated because, a hot shower is a great thing. Anyhow, so what's happening is we're feeling regulated and we're feeling like related, we're feeling connected. And so we're in our cortex, and what's happening is our cortex, the smartest part of our brain, is playing with facts. And it is the fact that facts are stored in our head that allows us to have those aha moments. So if you don't have facts stored in your head, guess what? You don't get ahas, right? And so actually the opposite of what I used to think is true. Facts being stored in our brains is critical for us to think, to problem solve, and to create and come up with new ideas, right? And so I learned that a few years ago. And then recently I heard about neuroscientists that have been tracking people's cognitive abilities since the 1950s. When I say cognitive ability, basically what I mean is like how tough, like how smart our brain is, right? Like, can our brain think, right? And every generation has improved in our cognitive capacity until about 2010. And it started to decline. And that basically lines right up with when schools started to do one-to-one technology. So tech in itself is not like, that's not bad, right? But it's the way we try to use it, because our brain has actually evolved to learn from humans in relationship. So that's how we actually learn. That's the first connection. That's what gets the facts to store. Then if we want to go practice or research, the computer is great because we have something to associate it to.
Right.
But to try to replace, and this is kind of what's happened, is we've basically replaced the human relationship with technology. And to say it simply, it's making us dumber. That's literally what's happening right now. Right?
It makes sense. It's just a very heavy thought. And it's important, I think, because I agree completely. I don't understand it fully, but I agree with what you're saying. And I think it's important we have these conversations, but I will admit I'm one of those people that's like, oh, I don't really know what to do about it. And like, well, I guess it starts with individuals. And so I'm like, okay, I'll use my phone less. And then it's, gosh, that's challenging. But it is important to I think, keep trying to set those boundaries. Like I have a thing on my phone where I'm not allowed to be on apps after 10 p.m., and that helps me. But it's a little tiny thing. I went off on a little bird walk there. Sorry, guys. I got excited.
That's what we do here. You're fitting right in.
Excellent.
Yeah, we bird walk.
I think, for me personally, the first step really to getting off your phone is to make the world around you more appealing. If you don't have any hobbies or you don't have anybody to hang out with, obviously you're going to be inside on your phone. There's nothing else to do. But if you have, for example, so like whenever I'm with my friends, I check my screen time that day. I've had maybe like 2 hours and it was mostly me listening to music, right? Days that I'm at my home by myself and because I don't really have any hobbies that I could do at my house, I'll check my screen time and I was on my phone my entire day. And so it's just, you gotta start.
Well, and it also, as I stumble through this thought here, it also is important for the kind of conversations you have, right? Like or how you learn. So if you're taking in information unobjectively from Wikipedia, which I'm very guilty of, I love Wikipedia. You're supposed to use it with a grain of salt. I know that, but I don't always do that. And I just sit there and I read it as if it's fact. And then I don't have another person to bounce ideas off of, or I don't have another person to maybe remind me that I'm getting my info from Wikipedia. So having another human I think that's one of the most important parts of it.
Definitely. The first thing you hear is the most likely thing you are to believe.
You're right.
Especially in most cases with news and such.
Right.
There was 2 thoughts I had. First one was about the pseudo relationships people can make with, I'm just going to say, digital stars or something under the lines of that, like just scrolling and seeing basically someone's entire life.
Okay, there's this lady that I love, and she's this cake decorator, and I seriously feel like I have a relationship with her, and I don't, right? Because I just watch her make cakes, and she does the day in the life and stuff. But I'm saying that because as you're talking, I thought of her, and I thought, I literally will be like, I want to see what Cake Lady's up to, right? And to me, it's a superficial connection, right? Like it's a one-way connection that I have with her,
a one-sided
right?
relationship.
Like I want to see what she's up to. She doesn't care what I'm up to.
Yes, people can idolize these people in their heads and make pseudo connections in a way and just isolate themselves.
It's the difference between having a real connection versus talking to an AI or having a connection with somebody online is when you really love somebody and they really love you, they will call you out on your BS. They will question you. And if you're to go on to ChatGPT, it's not going to tell you, yeah, you did something wrong. You did something really bad and you should seriously apologize, because then that's going to scare you off. You're not going to use the site anymore. And it's just going to say what you want to hear versus talking to your friend who cares a lot about you.
I love that. Yeah, it's like an echo chamber, right? If you're the only human involved in the conversation, you're going to get a lot of the same thoughts back and a lot of the same circular reasoning. I love what Lee said about, going and being around people that love you and care about you to get that advice or to get that honest feedback. I also would go as far to say that it's important to put yourself around other people you might not love and care about as much, because that really helps us grow as people, right? If you're in a situation, whether it's at work or maybe at school or something, and you're taking a class with someone, you have to do a project with a person you would never work with, in normal circumstances, that might be very unpleasant, and you might dread those meetings, and you might do the bulk of the work, or maybe you don't agree with the way the project's going or whatever, but I guarantee you will be a stronger person after going through that, especially if you go through it with the attitude like, I'm going to be polite, I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to see, what I can get from this experience. Way easier said than done, right? It's really hard to put ourselves out there, but I think there's a lot of power in human connection, right? And I think that's kind of what this is.
A lot of my education was from the internet,
going through elementary school and some parts of middle school. Not all of it, but a good portion of it was, hey, what's this on YouTube? Yeah, listen to this guy talk for an hour.
Yeah, and I can relate to that too, Azel. I mean, like I was saying with Wikipedia, it's like so easy to go on and get some information. And I do the same thing with YouTube. I'll want to learn about something, and you're trusting that the video you're looking up is telling you good quality information, or maybe if you don't have the time or the resources, you might not double check on that. And it might be innocuous, like if they're trying to help you change an oil filter on your car or something, that's not too dangerous to maybe get some bad information. But there's other topics that could be very risky to get some unbiased information about if we don't have a good balanced source.
Mind if I change the topic just a little bit? I remember when I was in my freshman year of high school, one of my periods was math. And the thing that I love about math is that math is rather consistent. 2 plus 2 is always going to be 4. 4 times 6 is always going to be 24, so on and so forth. And as long as you understand the formulas, you're always going to be able to get the right answer. So I passed that math class with flying colors. I got I'm not even kidding. I think I had an A+ in that class. So then I go into my next year of math, and the thing is that all the math that this guy was teaching me, it was pretty similar stuff to the year before that. I had no reason to not understand it, and I failed that class. And then I had to take it again the next year, and I passed with a C, maybe a C-. And I'd say the difference was that, connection with the teacher, it really does mean a lot. And so when I was in that classroom, I was getting distracted and I wasn't doing my work. And even the stuff that I was interested in, I just wasn't soaking it up.
Most of the teachers that I remember from my youth, I don't remember learning math or learning English from them. I remember the human connection we had. We're in school to learn. At least that's what we're told. We're in school to learn English, arithmetic, reading, writing, that sort of thing. But really, I think school is more learning how to be a human being, and there's lots of different paths. I'm not saying that if you go through homeschool or if you go through a private, situation or a small different kind of school, that's different or bad. It is different, but that's not a bad thing. I just think that our current public school system, has evolved to the point where it's really, you go out there and you're around your peers, and for better or worse, this is it. And so when we talk about what teachers are expected to do or what teachers should be doing with youth, I think there's the two expectations, right? We want them to teach and show us the subject matter. And there's very strict rules about how they have to do that, which also affects how they're able to teach. And as class sizes get bigger and their paychecks get smaller, it's that's probably one of the biggest challenges with teachers interacting with and resonating with students individually. I have a little bit of those challenges, but I'm lucky that in my role, I get to work individually with students a lot more often. So I'm very grateful that I don't have that same burden. So I think in general, it's very difficult for teachers and staff to find the time really to work with students one-on-one. And that really, makes me think these teachers that still go above and beyond and do that, like that is one of the strongest parts of being a good teacher. But it's a challenge. And I think personally with myself, I try to just listen more than I talk at first to see what does this kid need? Are they comfortable even asking me for what they need? Maybe they need to just chill for a second. I pulled this kid out of class. I told their teacher we're going to do part of the FAFSA, but we just might talk about football for 20 minutes because this guy looks like he needs to do that. Or we might talk about this girl's future plans with where she wants to go if she doesn't get into the culinary school she's trying to go to. It might be a deviation from what we're supposed to do because we need that human connection, or they might need that, and so I think that's kind of what I try to do is try to meet people where they're at, and then once we have a little bit of a foundation, then we can go and maybe tackle some of the stuff that either society says they need to be working on that I'm supposed to help them with because that's my job, and most of the time that lines up with things I want to do. My point is it's complex, I guess, and I think I try to look at it from a human angle first. Can't always do that, but try to.
But sorry, Hazel.
I was going to say, you reach a lot of kids at a very anxious point in their life. They think they have to have everything together when they really don't. They have so much more time, but they always think it's not enough.
All the time in the world, right? I mean, we do have a finite time as a human being, but when you are a youth, just learning who you are as a person going into adulthood, yeah, you have all the options. It's a beautiful time, but it's also the scariest, hardest time for a lot of people. So I think it's important to recognize that people in that age group, in the high school age group, or right out of that into your early to mid 20s, we're really unsure of who we are, and the world is changing so much, and we see things that, when I was a kid, I thought that if you were nice and you were a good person, the world would work out and everything would be nice and rosy all the time. And then you get older and that's not how it is. So you try to reconcile that, right? And you try to figure out just how to still have this outlook where I'm going to be the best person I can be and treat people kind and show up every day and try my hardest, even though it's difficult, while knowing that you might get something bad happen to you, even if you do everything right.
I think it's so true. Like what I was thinking about is, of course, brain, right? Dr. Perry gives us the regulate, relate, reason, and they're like literally the brain processes from the bottom up. And like really what I'm hearing you say you do is make sure somebody's regulated and connected to you before you try to change their cortex, right? And that makes you an incredibly effective teacher, because that's just like respecting the brain, right?
Try to, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so stressful and difficult to be a person, right? So
Yes.
I think when we can kind of check in with each other, and I have a lot of the same experiences on a different scale, not to diminish what anybody else is going through at a particular time, but our experiences from person to person are more similar than they are different. At least that's my opinion.
I think part of the problem with some, some not necessarily teachers, but like some learning environments is I felt that some teachers don't seem to be enjoying their job, right? They seem too distracted with their life or with stress that they show up in the workspace and they're clearly upset or angry or stressed, and they project it on the children. And then the children don't feel safe. And, that was the case with, some of my elementary school teachers, some of my teachers in high school, where I'm just like, I don't feel good to be here because your stress is now my stress, and I'm not sure how we're supposed to have a teacher-student relationship. But, little question to go along with that. Do you think many adults can be too distracted with life or other stuff when trying to talk to younger people? And is there any way that you can, is there any way you can really fix that?
That question is a toughie. I mean, I agree with what you're asking. I do think there's a lot of distractions in life, and I think, like we were talking about a little bit ago, with the technology increases and the fact that everybody has a smartphone now, and that screens are kind of ubiquitous with education and communication, for better or for worse. I think that it is more common to have adults being distracted. And in the classroom, that goes back to what we were talking about with larger class sizes, teachers not being compensated in the way that we would like them to be for the type of job that they're doing, right? And so these are kind of like societal questions, right, where there isn't really a good quick answer or a good quick way to fix this right now, but having these discussions, this is the bedrock for change. And so making the fact that you guys are asking me these questions and that we're sharing our thoughts, and then we're putting this out to the public for more people to talk about and more people to just be aware of not only these topics, but that kids in the community are thinking about this and that this is important to you guys, that to me is how this change happens. I think it's grassroots. I think it's people putting in the time and effort. Like, you guys doing this inspires me I'm so excited to get more people in on this podcast with you guys. I'm excited to spread the word. I've already told half of my friends from college about this. They're all going to listen to this episode and share it with their friends, and if for nothing else, just to spread out this kind of idea that it's important for us to talk, and it's important for us to try to make change, lasting change. I don't have all the answers, but I do really believe that it starts with this.
Can I share a quick story?
Of course.
When I was a teacher, I was a theater teacher. That's important to this story. And so the custodians, anytime there was like a good prop or piece of furniture someone else was discarding, it would just like show up in my room, right? So I ended up with this awesome rocking chair, and I set it right by my desk because it's where it fit. And back to like teachers just having more to do than they could ever like catch up on, right? That's me. And I would be sitting at my computer, and it was so interesting. I noticed over time, folks that wanted something from me would do one or two things. They would either come stand like above me at my desk so I could look up at them, or they would come sit in the chair. And I pretty quickly learned that if somebody came in and stood above me, they had a quick question that I just needed to look up and answer. But if somebody came and sat in that chair, I had to stop doing whatever I was doing. I just had to, because if somebody came and sat in that chair, they just needed to talk. And I don't know when I finally caught wind of it or whatever, but all that to say, I think a challenge too for not just teachers, but for everybody is like the majority of the time I could just stop what I was doing and give that person my undivided attention. But there were times when I was like really on a crunch and I really didn't have time. Like I really didn't have the 5 minutes that it took to stop and talk to somebody. And so I learned that it was okay to stop and look at that person and say, I really want to have whatever conversation with you you're here to have. I just can't have it right now. I'm on a deadline. I have about 10 minutes to finish something really critical. Can you come back? And I would say like whenever I'd be able to have that time. But that one little thing changed so much for me because it allowed me to still be like the helper that I want to be and connect with people the way that I want to, but also like set up a boundary to make sure I was taking care of that stress that is not the stress I'm creating. It's stress that's being like pushed on me from a system I don't control, but nonetheless, it's still my stress, right? So yeah, all those things that y'all were talking about, that really just helped me remember when somebody looks at us and says something, just stop and look at them and be in that moment with them. And then like, if you can't, then tell them you can't, because I don't know about y'all, but what I get a lot of are people pretending to listen to me, but looking at their phone. Right. And I think
I love what you're saying right now. I love that. Yeah. Sorry.
But no, I mean, I was done. Like, does this happen to you all? Like people basically fake listening to you. And it's like so obvious. Like, can we just stop doing that to each other? We all know how it feels when somebody else does it to us. Right. And then we all do it to other people. Like, let's just stop fake listening. Okay.
Yeah. There are some times that, if I'm going to be so honest, I'm a little antisocial. I love talking to people, but it just takes so much energy at times. And so sometimes I'll go out, I'll finally leave my room for the first time that day to go make myself some lunch. And I'm walking out there with the intention, I'm going to make myself some food. I'm going to turn on my show, and I'm just going to sit back into bliss and not speak or listen. I'm just going to just enjoy my show. And then all of a sudden, my aunt comes up, or my uncle comes up, or my cousin comes up, and they're deciding that they want to talk to me while I'm trying to watch my movie. And the thing is that in that moment, I could say, hey, can you please go away? I have plans right now. But I also understand that this is my family, and while it might be an inconvenience for me to change my plans, turn off my show, and sit down and listen to what they want to say, yeah, it's an inconvenience, but it's my family and I love them and I haven't talked to them all day and they want to speak to me. They miss me. And so I will suck it up and I will be irritated and I'll eat my food and I'll listen to them speak instead. And it's something that I've heard my friend say once is, inconvenience is kind of necessary to having a relationship. It's not, you can't have a relationship without inconveniencing yourself. It's not a bad thing to put yourself out of your way or make yourself upset.
Not an authentic one.
Yeah. It's not bad to kind of, inconvenience yourself and make yourself a little bit irritated for the betterment of someone that you care about, because if you're not willing to do that, then what are you willing to do for them?
Oh, you're looking at me like you expecting something. Well, I was going to talk about when this was more relevant, about how when I was in kindergarten, this is young me, mind you, so I might be exaggerating a little. But then this teacher wasn't very in tune with the classroom most of the times. I was having trouble getting out of my jacket being the 4-year-old me, and she would not help me. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure she ended up calling my parents because she did not want to help me unzip my jacket.
Yeah, that's. I would be a little confused as a 4-year-old. I'd be like, "Help me out of this thing." Yeah.
There's a really well-known quote by somebody. I don't know who it's from, but it's kids won't remember what you taught them, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. Right? And you were all kind of referring that earlier, and then that story, Azel really lifts that up. Right? What do you remember of that she
Was evil.
right? That she wouldn't help you with your coat. Like, and literally these are the memories that we carry with people later, right? It has everything to do with how they made us feel.
I can't remember any little bit of information from any of my classes, but I remember every single one of my teachers' names, and I could tell you how much I liked or disliked them when I was in school.
This reminded me of a story. I had a kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Presby Morris, one of my favorite human beings. I love this woman. She was my kindergarten teacher. Years later, she's still at the same school because it's a K through 8th. I'm like in 4th grade, and the fly to my pants breaks, and I'm in the bathroom trapped. And I tell my buddy, I was like, "Go get Miss Presby Morris. There's nobody else I trust. Can you please go get Miss Presby Morris?" And so she came, and it even stresses me out just thinking about it now because I remember that vividly and how mortified I was. And then no hesitation, this sweet woman, she's like, "Josh, I'm here. You can come to the door. I'll come in there." You know, just how supported I felt. And one of 4th grade Josh, that was one of the worst moments of my life up until that point, because I thought I was like, I didn't know, you're like, am I breaking the law? My pants aren't working, all these things that you're just worried about as a kid. And then you're like, well, who can I trust? And so it's wonderful to have those people. And you're not going to remember them teaching you multiplication tables. You're not going to remember, the grade you got in the book report in the middle of November and, in your 3rd grade year or whatever. But you do remember how they make you feel, and I think that that's what we take away.
I think that's actually where having healthy, well-intentioned, good-hearted teachers can kind of be necessary, because you can't always ensure that a child's parents are going to have good intentions for them, and so those are the only 2 parents you get, really. That's kind of just all you have, unless you're adopted or you go to a foster home or you have chosen family. And so having teachers who you can go to in the case that you can't go to your parents, it's very necessary. And so if teachers aren't making that safe space, then where are the kids supposed to go?
Well, then who's making the safe space for the adults too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can only give what we get, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all I really don't think that there are like parents that don't care about their kids. I think we have the skills that we have based on the experiences that we've had, right?
Yeah, that's probably a better way to phrase it.
Well, and I just say that because for any parent that's listening, I, as a parent myself, right, like, I'm constantly like, it's constantly like, am I doing right by my child, right? And then realizing that the only thing I can default to are the things that basically I've seen. And if I want to do something different, I have to kind of like make that up on my own. And that's tricky stuff, So when I was 17, who I would have identified as a safe adult, looking back at as my 40-year-old self, these were not safe adults. These were adults I would have called safe at 17 were adults that let me do things I should not have been doing, right? And so I just wanted to draw out like, right, safe, like what is even, like, how do we know when we feel safe, right? And if I'm raised in like a really chaotic environment where everybody's like drinking and yelling and there's a lot of aggression, the way the brain works, that is actually what becomes safe to me, because for the brain, safety is predictability, right? So if the environment I'm in for the first 5 years of my life is chaos, that is safety, right? So I'm just letting that sit for a second, okay? Because then I'm 5, and what's safe for me is screaming, yelling, and chaos, and you put me in a classroom that has a lot of control with a caring, loving teacher, that is actually going to feel threatening and unsafe to me. So now that teacher that tries to hug me is not safe, right? When that teacher on their own might be the safest person legitimately in the world that would be the one protecting me, right? And in having these conversations about how we can like be with each other and connect with each other, I think part of it is coming back to talking about like really, really what does safe mean, right?
And that goes back to diverse relationships with diverse people, right? Because if you have a relationship with an 80-year-old grandpa type man, and then you have a relationship with maybe a 25-year-old female teacher, they're going to be very different in a lot of ways, but they should have some underlying qualities about them that you're going to be able to recognize that that's safe. You know, these people are not touching my body in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable. They're not saying things to me that make me feel uncomfortable.
They're not buying me alcohol.
All these things, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes these safe, reliable adults go out of their way to show you that they're not trying to put you in a position. Like whenever I had a teacher or a student come into my classroom, I'd oh, hold on, I got to go prop the door open. And I'm saying this and like making sure they're aware of like that you shouldn't feel awkward and it's okay to talk about like if you need something to change or you're like, I forget to shut the door, like remind me, you know, or whatever it is, going out of your way to normalize, asking for comfort, I guess, and telling people what you need. But yeah, I think that if we're lucky enough to be around some safe adults, we will see these patterns and stuff that I think we can look for. And it's not a fail safe, right? There are exceptions, I think, and there are situations, but it's a really good baseline, I think, that could help us.
What are some tips that adults who work with youth can use to stay really present so it's easier for young people to connect and understand what's being shared?
I think just trying to remain in the moment and be as honest and upfront with the students you can, I think, is a powerful thing that teachers have in their toolbox and helping students where they're at. Real quick, a story here just about me. When I was 16, my parents were going through a divorce and my math teacher became my counselor. I didn't know it at the time, and he knew it, and he could have just told me, oh, I don't have time, you know, or this isn't in my wheelhouse, but he would wait in his classroom for me, and I would talk to this dude, and he's somebody I still have a positive relationship with to this day. And it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh my God, you know, he was helping me get through one of the most difficult times of my life and was doing so selflessly and so gracefully. And he knew exactly what he was doing. And he didn't take the time to be like, you know what I'm doing for you, or to tell me when I was wrong, or to tell me things that I, you know, oh, maybe he let me vent and he let me share my feelings, be vulnerable with somebody I trusted at the time. And so not every teacher needs to do that. Not every teacher needs to stay 2 hours after school for you or whatever it is, but they find different ways to let you know that they see you and that they will try to support you. And that looks different for different teachers. But I think it's my advice would just be try to see your students as people and try to remember that you were in their shoes once before and see if you can help them kind of get to that next step.
What I've had to learn is sometimes I'm not that person for kids, and that's okay. And because like for me, and I think a lot of teachers are similar to me in that way, like we do want to help everybody and we will stay for 4 hours after school, right? And then like there are certain people or kids that like maybe we see are struggling and we try to connect with, and they don't want that connection with us, right?
Or maybe they want it from a different adult or at a different time. Right?
That's what I found, right? And it really like you have to remove your own because there's ego involved in it, right? And I had to get to the point where it's like, honestly, so if I care about this kid, do I care if I'm the person that's helping them? And the truth is like, no, I don't. What I care about is that they have a safe, caring, connected, trusted adult that can help them. Right. And so like, you know, the conversation shifted to if I reach out, you know, and I can tell that youth doesn't want to connect with me for whatever reason. Like, it doesn't matter why. Right. But to say like, is there an adult you trust in this building that you would talk to this about? Mm-hmm. Right. And most of the time they can say, yeah, and they can tell the person. And then I can say something like, will you go talk to them on your own? Or can I like be a bridge to help you connect with them?
Very true.
Right.
Yeah. I can resonate with what you're saying too, because it took me a while as a professional to understand full circle what you just shared there about like it's okay if I'm not the person for every student. And it reminds me we had 200 kids at the high school put their trusted adult person up there, and then for whatever reason all those names were put on a list, and my name showed up there. There's one kid that put me up there, and I was so honored. We had people that put, Taryn's name 50 times, or Cherie's name 50 times, or Miss Pomerlou's name 30 times, and one kid was like, Josh Sluddy's my person. And I was like, dude, I'm so glad this kid feels that they can talk to me and that they trust me. Oh my God, But then there was also a tiny bit of me that was like, man, I wonder why these other kids don't like me. And that couldn't have been further from the truth, but it takes me, or even if it is, that's okay. Not everybody can relate to me, I'm a little bit of aloof. We all have our unique personalities, right? And we find people that we resonate with. And so you're not going to resonate with everybody, and that's very okay. But it can be hard. We're people too. We want to be loved and included, and sometimes we have our lizard brain thinking first before we think about the bigger picture, but we're all very human.
How can youth be more present in conversation?
That's another very good question. Well, first they have to be given the ability to have a voice, right?
Yeah, I found it hard for me to even talk on this podcast sometimes. Putting yourself out there is a very hard thing to do, and most kids would rather stay all tucked up than say anything.
So I think, one, making the tough decision to be like, I'm going to go do this thing that's very scary. I'm going to go talk in front of a bunch of adults and community members and put myself out there. That's one way to do it. But the other way, I think, is projects like this that take on a different approach, right? Like, we know we can just go to a community meeting and share our thoughts, but that might not always make meaningful change, right? They might provide a spot for you guys to talk, and it's like, oh, okay, we let the kids say something. We're just going to make our decisions anyway.
Yeah, you could just be talking to a wall.
Right. But something like this is not something that can be ignored, and it's your own space. And so it kind of takes the ball out of their court. And instead of depending on the district or the county to give you a space to talk, you're saying, no, I'm going to create my own space because I matter and what we have to say matters. And so if you guys aren't going to give us what we want or need, we're going to just do it ourselves. And I think that's what you guys are trying to do here. And I think it's beautiful. And I think it's so important. Any meaningful change happens from people kind of shaking stuff up and changing stuff,
And one thing if I could tell all young people something, find your mentor, and you can literally go and ask them. And I think a lot of times kids don't realize that you can pretty much pick any adult that you admire or want to learn something from and go up to them and be like, hey, could you help me with something? And 97% of the time, that adult is going to look at you and say yes. And it's going to make them feel so good, and they're going to be ecstatic to do it. And I think kids just genuinely don't know that. You really can just go ask an adult for help. And in their head, they're doing back handsprings because you just made them feel really wise and important.
What Taryn's saying is so true. I am so selfishly getting so much out of what you guys have offered to me today. I'm so serious. One of the most important lessons I've ever learned is from my mom, who's the director of a nonprofit. And I used, Mom, you're great. You do all this stuff. And she's like, I do this to feel good. Not, it's more complex than that, but I need this job just as much as you perceive this job needing me. I need to feel like I belong. I need to feel like I am a part of society that's making meaningful change, or at least attempting to, and I think that's what I hear in Azel's voice. I hear that in Lee's voice. I think you guys are saying, we're here, we're part of this world, and it's nice to just be a part of it, but we want to actually be, making the change and being an active participant in this world, not just an NPC, as the kids say. That was a RuneScape drop. You know what that is, right? Yeah.
I have a vague idea. I'm pretty sure it's a video game.
It's pretty old, yeah.
Full circle.
Yes, yes.
Josh, I want to tell you, thank you for showing up and sharing yourself with all of us today. Thank you for modeling that presence and sitting with us in it.
I mean, thank you guys for having me. I am very serious when I say that I'm getting a lot out of this, and I want to be a part of this meaningful change of the community too. So I'm very grateful you guys are allowing me to be part of your meaningful change. So thank you.
And thank you, listeners. Thank you, supporters, KFUG and Trillium Teen Center. Anchor Point is a project of Resilient Donatal. Find out more about us at www.resilientdonatal.org. And don't forget to stick with us for future episodes. We've got more amazing conversations coming your way. See you next time.
Wait, I think the way that you always sign off those, everybody says Anchor Point, like in kind of disarray, right? Okay, is everybody right?
What?
Anchor Point.
Anchor Point?
What? Don't you guys always just like say Anchor Point a whole bunch of times at the end, right?
I don't.